Hey, just a heads up that the following content may be disturbing or triggering for some listeners and is not appropriate for children. Please take care of yourself and others who may be listening with you. Welcome to the Bonus Babies Podcast, a show that has no easy answers, only hard questions.
If no one's listening to you and you're abused at home and you're neglected and you don't feel heard and validated, and then one day you meet someone and they just hear you, they don't like try to change anything, but they just like take the time to listen. I think that is so powerful. And I think that validation is extremely underrated. Like, to be a therapist, we can do amazing interventions using CBT, DBT, and all these things. And that's so important. But I think for a lot of kids, just us listening, actually listening, not like doing anything else while we're, not shuffling papers or looking at our nails, like actively listening to them and validating them and having this understanding. I think that is extremely powerful.
Can you tell me what you call the kids who you've cared for over the years?
We feel that the children that we receive coming into our home are bonuses. So we call them bonus babies.
I love that. This is your host, Jayne Amelia Larson, and I'm a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate volunteer for youth in foster care. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful. In the same way a CASA works, I explore all things in the foster care maze by talking to kids, parents, caregivers, attorneys, social workers, therapists, really anybody and everybody who will speak to me to keep the conversation open and the information flowing about all things CASA. My executive producer, Jayne Amelia, introduced me to a young woman who he has known since she was a child, and she's a powerhouse. Kylie Green started out in Tinseltown, the ugly world of Hollywood, and one day realized, no, I'm not doing this the rest of my life. So she changed her life and went back to school, and she now works with troubled kids, making their lives better. She's realized that she's highly empathic, and she has also realized that if she can get through to just one kid, then everything she's doing is worthwhile. All the disappointments, all the rejections, it's all worthwhile if she can get through to one kid and make that kid's life a little better. I'm here with Kylie Green. Hello, Kylie. Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Thanks for going through that effort to hook up. It took some time. Just so people know who are listening, it took her half an hour to get set up, but she's sharp as a tack and she did it a whole variety of different ways, and now we're on. So thank you.
Of course.
So Kylie, tell me a little bit about who you are, how you were raised. What's your world? What was your world?
I was raised in Los Angeles in a two-parent for a little bit, but then one-parent household with a little sister. Pretty traditional family. As a little girl, not to brag, but I was always extremely, extremely polite. I just remember people always telling my mom, "Oh my God, Kylie like came up to me and said, 'Thank you for this birthday present.' And Kylie wrote me this thank you note." And I just always was very well mannered. I'm not exactly sure how my parents parented me to be like that, or if it's just kind of in my blood. I think because I am a definite empath, I just I connect with people and have always really cared about people and have wanted to make sure that people know I appreciate them. So I was just like a really sweet little kid. I love to spend time with family and friends, and I've always had a really, really intense connection with animals. That was me as a little kid. I always wore hats too. Hats were my thing.
Really?
So I loved fashion, animals,
Mm-hmm.
and people. Yeah.
And then, so what happened when you graduated from school? You ended up working in Hollywood for a little while, but that took a hit, right?
Yeah. My whole family works in Hollywood in different types of positions, whether it's like sound or whether it's kind of working behind the scenes and publicity or, working at the agency level. So I always felt that I might end up there. So after I graduated college, I had an opportunity to kind of jump in and give that a try. I was there, I think it was like 4.5, 5 years. I started out in the music department, doing ticket counts and calling around to different countries, seeing how our shows were doing, how they were selling, if they weren't selling well, like why, and what we could do about that. Then started actually booking artists at different arenas around the world. And then after that, I started working in branding. So basically getting celebrities deals with like Dolce & Gabbana and Rolex and Heinz Ketchup, you name it. So it was quite an experience. Every organization, every company has, they have different sides of them. And this was a very toxic environment for me personally. So I just decided to scram out of there.
Excellent. And then you went back to school, or what did you end up doing then?
So then, after I left that organization, I think I was so obsessed with doing something so opposite because I felt very yucky. I felt like I was helping promote things to younger kids and younger adults, and I didn't want to be a part of that, like making children think that being a size 000 is normal or like a personality trait. And I just felt like I was kind of pushing that. And so, anyways, after I left, I just felt like I needed to do something so opposite. So I ended up doing ABA therapy, which is in-home therapy for kiddos that have autism. So I did a training, like a long, extensive training to do that. And this is before I got my master's. So this was after I got my undergrad and everything, and after I did work in Hollywood for years. And so I was doing in-home ABA therapy, which was also definitely an experience.
I bet that was hard, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because a lot of it is managing the expectations of parents, and parents have these kiddos and it's frustrating. Like sometimes with autism, kids do not want to try new foods. They don't want to change their outfits. I worked with a kiddo that wore the same shirt every single day, every single night, I think for 8 months, and it was ripped and it had tears in it, and he would not change the shirt. And if you tried to change his shirt, he would scream, he would have a complete breakdown. It was very traumatic for him to try and put on other shirts. And so when I started working with this child, after a couple weeks, the parents were like, "What's going on? Why is he still wearing the same shirt?" And I'm like, "You guys, your son's been like this now for 3 years. It's going to take more than a couple sessions of intensive therapy to actually make a change. This is like behavior that he's been having for a while now." And so parents would really want to see extremely quick changes in behavior that's really embedded in their child or things that have been going on for a really long time. So that for me was the hardest part of that job. The kids were wonderful and the challenges are worth it, but the parents were the ones that, really wanted to see quick results. And in life, you just don't really see that in general. Nothing super, super quick. Like look at fad diets. It's not like the healthiest or, the most long withstanding type of approach. So
All right. And then after that, you ended up going to school to get a master's in social work because you wanted
yes.
you wanted to dig deeper, you want to know more.
Yeah, so after that, I was just really interested and just loved working with kids in general. And I just realized that if I wanted to, knowledge is power. If I really wanted to make more of an impact and do the jobs that I really wanted to do, I just had to get that, higher level of education. Not saying that you cannot do impactful things with a high school degree. I mean, you absolutely can. But for me, the things I wanted to do, the positions I wanted to hold, I did need my master's. I did end up getting that. I did a 2-year full-time program. And while I was there, I interned at a school, and I also interned at a hospital.
Right. So you worked in actually a psych hospital.
That was after. So my internships were at an actual medical hospital as a medical social worker. I worked in the cancer department and provided services to, the patients, the families, the caregivers, the friends. And I also ran the support groups for stage 4 terminal cancer patients.
Wow, you've just had a really varied experience, and this is at a really
Yeah.
young age, right?
Yeah. This was in my early mid-20s, but yeah, it was a very, I don't know the right word for it. The cancer experience, I think it was interesting because I worked with the terminal patients. So working with the patients that were like in stage 1 and 2 versus working with the patients that were in stage 4, and it was actually so positive because a lot of those patients went through the stages of grief, and they were kind of at a point where they were at this level of acceptance and just like wanting to tie off loose ends and spend as much time with their family as they could. And obviously, this is not for every person. Just in terms of the population that I worked with, that was something that was very surprising to me, is the level of peace and acceptance that I was dealing with. I walked in there thinking I was just going to be sobbing every day. It was going to be so depressing. It was going to be affecting my home life. Like, how am I going to give myself enough self-care to kind of deal with this population? But it was almost the opposite of that. So that's why assuming is not ideal.
And how did you end up working exclusively with kids? Because that's what you're doing now, right?
Yeah. After that internship, I ended up working at a school. Um, and yeah, I just really, kids are kind of what I wanted to focus on. So I just kind of tried to steer my job searches and my internship towards that. Second year MSW students usually are able to pick where they intern. First year is usually an automatic placement. So when I had the opportunity to kind of have that choice, they really tried to make it known that I wanted to work with kids, at least like high schoolers or younger. So that's why I was placed at a school. So that was a really good experience. And then after all my internships, once I graduated, I worked at the psychiatric hospital, which was woo, that was a kooky experience. I could write a book. I could write a book on the things that happened there and the things that were said and the people I met. It's just very, if you want to be able to work anywhere in this industry, you go to a psych hospital. You will learn skills you didn't even know you had, and you will just pull things out and, on the spot. You have to do things on the spot sometimes. And this psych hospital, as most are, was extremely acute. So only, very, very, very intense situations, usually just a couple days stay, maximum like 5 days. So these are not people that are looking for long-term treatment. These are like people that need assistance immediately. Like they are in grave danger of harming others or themselves. So very acute stuff. And I worked knock. I worked the knock shift. So
Which means what? What
knock is overnight. So it's like,
like
yeah,
overnight,
11.
right, like nocturnal?
Yeah.
Oh, like
Mm-hmm.
graveyard shift? Yeah.
Yeah. So you get just the most interesting population.
Right. But you're like smiling as you're talking about this
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like you got through it okay.
With humor. With
Hmm.
humor. It just, some of the situations are so, they're not funny, but some of the situations that I was put in and the people I've met were so unbelievable that you just, I have to laugh at it because that's just, there's nothing else I can do. But definitely a dangerous job, not gonna lie, definitely a dangerous job. I was doing assessments at like midnight in, with no security. There was no one monitoring anything, and it was just me in these closed assessment rooms with people right off the street that were drug addicts or had severe mental illness or that just came out of prison. So that was actually the main reason I left that job. I think it's a really great experience, but it just was not worth, I want to live and I want to continue to do this job and help people. And I just was not, it was getting to a point where I just was like, this is really not safe. So I'm going to move on to something else, but definitely learned a lot.
And you're working in a residential program now that is all kids, right?
So now I work as a therapist at a nonprofit. And this nonprofit, they have a bunch of different programs. One of the programs they have is residential. It's on a 5-acre amazing campus in California. It's clean and well kept, and they have all these little cottages, and it's just really nice to see, because I think when some people think of residential, they think of other things. And so I'm really blessed to work at a facility where it's just, it's homey. It's homey. It's not home, but it's homey. It's the least that we can do for the kids. So on this residential facility that's 3 to 4 acres, there's a school. And that is where I am the therapist. I am the therapist at that school where we have both community and residential students.
Right. So who are your clients then?
My clients are either living in the residences on campus or they're coming from the community to go to school. And so my caseload is a mix of the residential kids and the community children.
And you treat them why? For what reasons? Or why are they there? I'm just trying to get to what the population is like.
Yeah, so the school I work at on that campus is called an NPS, which is a non public school. The reason that kiddos are referred to go to a non public school, there's so many different situations, anywhere from kiddos that are having a really hard time at their general education type school, maybe because they have autism or a learning disability, or maybe because they have it like increasing violent behaviors, or maybe they have such severe trauma, it's getting in the way of their learning. I mean, there's just so many different reasons why kids go to a school like this. It's mainly for a lot of additional support and a lot of modifications to their environment so that they can thrive, because they're not thriving at general education schools. And they're either referred mostly by their school district or sometimes by insurance companies. And then sometimes there's some other reasons that kind of fall through the cracks that are kind of miscellaneous. So we have kids in the system, there's kids that are recently adopted, there's kids that come from a two-parent household that there's CPS stuff going on and they can't be in the home right now. We have kids that are living at residential because they're dangerous, because they're a threat to their families and they needed to be taken away. And so they're living in the facilities. So I see all of those kids on my caseload every week. And like I said, it's just, they're each super different. They're either like living at home with parents, or they're living with a guardian, or they're living at the residences in residential and they're in foster care. And so it just lots of different populations going on. And the ages range. I think the youngest we have right now is 7. I think the oldest on campus right now is early 20s.
Right. And how do you feel about the work that you're doing, Kylie?
This is the best I've ever felt about the work that I'm doing, because I really feel like my morals and values align with the organization I work with, which I think is the ultimate goal in life, is to work for a place where you believe in what they're doing. And
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. That's a nice thing to have.
yeah, and of course, there's employees that work there that they're there to make a buck and get through whatever they need to get through. But I could like honestly say that the majority of people that work there, they seriously care about these kids. They really, really, really care. A lot of like multidisciplinary team meetings that happen. I think that's so important. So that's just something I really respect. So I love working there. It's can be very difficult, obviously, but I just at the very least, I'm just proud. I'm proud to work where I work. And I don't think I've been able to say that ever, but I'm really proud to work where I work. I'm proud of the work I do. I'm proud to be part of the community I'm a part of. And this is the first time I'd actually like recommend to the community a place that I'm working at. Like I would be like, oh, if you're dealing with this, I work here. Send your kids here. I'll help you with the process. So I think that's a really good feeling.
Wow, that's a wonderful thing to hear because there are a lot of agencies, as you know, that are out there with good intentions that fail, that are
Yeah.
not doing good work. And there's people with good intentions at those agencies that get burned out. They don't,
Hmm.
and they feel like they're not making a difference. It sounds
Hmm.
like you really feel like you are making a difference.
I mean, and that's something I struggle with, which I think is something that a lot of therapists struggle with, is imposter syndrome. It's talked about in so many supervision meetings. Imposter syndrome. Am I good enough? Am I incompetent? But for me, when I teach, I also teach group therapy in addition to individual therapy. And usually the classes are like, I'd say like 12 kids. They're smaller. So if I teach a concept or I do an activity I worked really hard on, which I always do, and 11 out of the 12 kids are like cussing me out and saying, Miss Kylie, oh, like this is horrible. This is the worst activity ever. You suck. This is so boring. This is for kids. But if one of those kids, so if 1 out of the 12 gets something from that, to me, that is huge. That's a win. I will celebrate it for the rest of the day. I will brag about it to my coworkers. I will brag about it to the principal. I celebrate every tiny, tiny, tiny thing. Like if a kid's been refusing session for 6 months and then they agree to step outside of the classroom and check in with me and have a 36-second conversation. That is huge. And I will praise them. I am annoying. I will praise them. I will say, this was so amazing. This is so awesome. Do you understand like how awesome this is? Thank you so much. I really hope we can do this again. So I just really celebrate everything tiny, because it eventually will add up. So that's kind of the way that I feel like I've progressed, or, I'm doing a good job, or I'm doing good work.
Right. You mentioned to me when we first spoke that you know what it's like to have one person connect with you. Like when you were a kid, there was one person, maybe more than one person, and that person can change your life. Is that what you feel you're doing?
I hope I can be that to someone. I think if no one's listening to you and you're abused at home and you're neglected and you don't feel heard and validated, and then one day you meet someone and they just hear you, they don't like try to change anything, but they just like take the time to listen. I think that is so powerful. And I think that validation is extremely underrated. Like, to be a therapist, we can do amazing interventions using CBT, DBT, and all these things. And that's so important. But I think for a lot of kids, just us listening, actually listening, not like doing anything else while we're, not shuffling papers or looking at our nails, like actively listening to them and validating them and having this understanding. I think that is extremely powerful.
I have actually found that to be true about the youth who I've interviewed for this podcast. They just want to be heard. Even if they've told their stories to professionals throughout, or pieces of stories or whatever, that actually the opportunity just to say it out loud in their own way and be heard is a really important part of the growth process.
Yeah, and I think it's a mix of really having good listening skills, but I think the big whammy on top of everything is being authentic. Kids can see through you. Like, people don't even understand. Kids are smarter than you think. A 7-year-old, you're whispering in the hallway, they know what's going on. So I always tell my staff and people I work with, every interaction you have with another staff or a student in front of other students is a learning opportunity for them. So you always need to be careful and know that everything you do, they're learning, they're watching you, they're observing our behavior. So it's so important. But just that authenticity and validation, and knowing that these kids have a lot of potential and they're smarter than people think. Just because a kid's 8, they're not just 8. They're like a little human being. They're growing and learning and absorbing, and they are smarter than people think. So that's my 2 cents. But when I was working at the hospital, I had an 8-year-old disclose something to me that she's never told anyone that warranted a pretty intense CPS call. But when I asked her and like praised her and thanked her for being so vulnerable with me, someone she just met, I was just doing the assessment. It's usually like 45 minutes to an hour and a half when they come to the hospital. And she said, because all my other therapists were fake and you're real. And that was why someone disclosed something to me, because I was just came across as authentic and genuine. So just even as a therapist, social worker, just being a genuine human being and not trying to be something you're not, and just being who you are appropriately, obviously, I think that goes a really long way in this sector.
But how are you doing that?
I think the way I do therapy, obviously I'm trained in these like amazing, like I said, interventions, and I have extensive terminology. I know I'm intelligent. I know I have a lot of skills. But when I'm speaking to young kids, I'm not using that terminology. And I'm not going to try and use CBT worksheets that have all these words in them. I'm going to apply it and use words that they know. I'm going to meet them where they are. I'm going to meet their language skills at where they are. And if I need to talk to kids about whatever's going on at home, using an example, using Minecraft stuffed animals, then that's what I'll do. So I just try and be as humble as possible with every age range, gender, population I work with. And I think it goes a long way, because I think some clinicians, just the level of like terminology and language is so extensive sometimes. And I think that's super appropriate when working with like adults or people that need that. But when working with kids, I think it's important just to level with them. So I think that's maybe the way that I've come off as genuine. I'm also just genuine. So that works.
Yeah, and you've also said that even when you get pushback, you make it clear to the kids you're not going anywhere, that because so many of the adults in their lives have failed them or left or abandoned
Mhm.
them or
Mhm.
or abused them, and
Mhm.
you make it clear, I'm not going anywhere. No matter what you do, I'm here.
Yeah. Um, a lot of, I don't know if people know this, but in residential, in CPS, in the foster care system, the turnover is unreal. Like people quitting and them hiring new people. So people are not around for a long time.
Right, so you mean the turnover in the people that are giving the care, in the adults giving the care.
Yes, yes, in terms of staffing. So these foster kids have a connection with a counselor maybe in residential, and they finally connect with someone, and it's taken 6 months, and they're just starting to be vulnerable. They've just talked about their trauma. They're just processing it. And that counselor leaves. And then a new one comes in for 3 months, and then they leave. And then a new one comes in for 4 months and they leave. So why waste the energy? Like from the kid's perspective, why am I going to waste the energy? You're just going to leave. Why am I going to really go deep and try and work on this with you when everyone just leaves? And they're not wrong. They do, because the burnout is real, and it is a very, very, very hard job. It is. It's hard, and especially in residential, especially with CPS, with these just very, very intensive situations. In residential, you're there, you're working late hours. I mean, it's totally understandable, but it also is understandable to me that that's why kids don't want to open up.
I have heard that from many kids. They say, why should I bother to make the connection, because they're just going to leave anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, or kids whose parents have left, and a lot of them have self blame. Oh, like they left because of me, or dad left and never came back because of me, or mom went to drugs because of me. A lot of like shame, a lot of guilt that comes up. So, why do I want to tell this person something if I'm going to make them leave? So there's all these like abandonment issues along with other issues, and anger is a secondary emotion. You're not just angry because you're angry. You're angry because you're sad. You're angry because you're scared. You're angry because you have a fear. So that anger that I receive from the kids, I know it's stemming from something else, and I try to be understanding of that.
Have you ever felt that you failed a kid?
The way that I have felt that I have failed kids primarily was when I was working at the psychiatric hospital. And it's when I had parents calling intake, and they would describe their situation, and it was intense, and their kid absolutely needed to be hospitalized, and the parents were absolutely in danger, and the kids were in danger. But due to insurance, I wasn't able to take them. And that was the absolute worst feeling in the whole world, is knowing 100% a child needed that higher level of care, absolutely. But due to something like insurance, I had to tell these parents, I had to tell these kids, these caregivers, we can't accept you. And then they're crying and saying, what are we supposed to do? What am I supposed to do then? And it's like all that pressure's on me. And I actually used to get in trouble at that job for spending too much time on the phone. But I didn't care, because I was not going to get off the phone with those people unless they had backup resources. So I would be like, putting them on hold, typing into the computer, talking to friends, like texting people, like, where can I send someone for this? And I guess the way selfishly that I was able to hang up the phone without crying, and knowing that I at least did the absolute most I could do. But I felt like I failed people daily by not being able to provide them the care they needed due to something like insurance. And I know like thousands, millions of people struggle with that same thing, just the barriers that not having specific type of insurance, what it does to people. And it's horrific. It's so sad. Kids really needed to be in that hospital. And because they had Medi-Cal versus Cigna, no, sorry. I'm sorry, your child wants to complete a suicide right now. You need to call 911 and figure it out. That's not something that I would say, but that's the way that the superiors kind of handled that, and that's the way it was. So
Right, and you feel now that even the little small successes that you have are really worth celebrating, because you know you're making a difference every day in the work that you do.
yeah, I hope so. And I do have a lot of kids that come in my office and they're like, you're so annoying, or I hate you, or I want to go back to class, or you're not funny. I mean, I get it all, but I still try and make something out of that. Like, oh, you think I'm annoying? You still came in my office for 20 minutes. So, and we got to talk about your weekend. And so I try and just take the little things, even out of those like moments, just to kind of get me through the day. But also, the truth is, in life, not everyone's going to like you. That includes kids. I'm just not going to vibe with some kids. Some kids are going to be, I might remind them of someone they hate. Just like normal human beings, adults, like you might see someone that looks like your boyfriend's ex girlfriend and you just don't like her. Never met her, but you just don't like her. So I try and, you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And I just, try the best I can, but also accept that sometimes it's just not a good match. Sometimes it's not a good match.
Right, right, but your feelings get hurt too? Or do you armor up?
My feelings definitely get hurt, but it's for a moment until I am able to kind of talk myself through it. Like, oh, they said this, but I think because I pushed them or placed a demand on them and they're not used to having demands placed and it's triggering. Or, oh, they probably just don't like me. Maybe I look like someone, or maybe they just, whatever. Sometimes kids just don't like you, and that's something I've just had to accept. But yeah, I definitely like kids can be harsh. They can be super, super mean. I think the time my feelings get the most hurt is, like I said, I also teach group therapy and I work really hard in the curriculum. I mean, I really try super hard to be creative. I'm a therapist, not an artist, but I really try and bring in all these different like mediums, and I try and do the most because I know if I go into a classroom with a PowerPoint about levels of anger or feelings, they've heard it all. They've all been therapized.
Yeah, they'll just tune out, right, yeah.
Yeah, so I try really hard to kind of add something to it. And sometimes like I will work on it until super late at night, like after work's over, and I'm just like always working on it. And then I'll go in, I'm really excited about it. And they'll just be like, Miss Kylie, this is so dumb. I'm not doing this. And they'll just like start cussing and they'll be super annoyed. They'll rip it up, they'll throw it. And yeah, I mean, for a second, my feelings are hurt, but is that my ego? Or am I, I have to kind of like talk myself through why my feelings are hurt. And then like I said, usually there'll be one person or one comment made that will just allow me to kind of take it as a win, even though to other people it might look like an absolute dumpster fire. To me, I can always find like one thing about it. Like, oh, that kid completed the assignment, or that kid said that they wanted to take this home or back to the residence. So there's always like something I can find. But if my feelings ever do really actually get hurt for a moment, and I feel like someone like stabbed me, it's usually during my group therapy sessions when I really put a lot of like actual time into creating something. But that's okay.
It sounds like you're a really good therapist yourself.
Me and my inner voice are close. We're close.
What does
I'm
that mean?
like I'll talk to myself about stuff. Like it's okay, Kylie. Like you're good. You did the best you could. Like I try and talk myself out of like intrusive thoughts that are negative. What I teach my kids is, sometimes we have these really annoying, mean thoughts that come through. They're just like come through. And the way I explain it is it's just like a dog that's like jumping up and down on you when you get to a friend's house, and it just wants to be pet. It just wants attention. So if you just pet it and say, "Hey Buster, what's up? How are you? You're so cute," and rub its head for a second, it's probably going to run away and go get a toy or something. So that's the way that I also treat those to myself, is when I get those thoughts that are like telling me I'm incompetent, or you're not a good therapist, or today was stupid, you didn't do well in group. I just acknowledge I'm having a bad thought and I give it attention, and then I say, bye, leave the same way you came, the door's open. I'm going to get on with my day. So just things I use with my clients, like the things I say to my kiddos and the way that I do therapy, I also use myself. Because how can you, like, quotation marks with my hands, sell a product like genuinely if you don't even use it yourself, kind of? So that's the way that I feel about therapy, is like if you're going to give other people knowledge and share tips and tricks and provide, guidance to people, then I would hope that you would also be utilizing things you're giving to children or other people. So
I think that you just sound so talented. You're like a powerhouse.
oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, just the way you're communicating this to me, how much I've learned from you just by this very brief exchange. I kind of want to go home and do some homework to figure out how to be a better therapist for myself, in my own head. Right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. And it's funny because, you know, I always kick myself about why did I waste so much time in Hollywood? Why did I waste years and years working in this industry, wanting to become an agent and, live in Los Angeles and have all these nice cars and like have all these big materialistic dreams? But it's like, I don't like the quote, everything happens for a reason. I don't like that because not everything happens for a reason. Sometimes there's straight up tragedy. Sometimes things happen in the world and there's not a reason for it. I don't think it's comforting like when someone passes away or something like that and people go, everything happens for a reason. But I do think that if you've made mistakes in life or gone down different paths, there's things you absolutely take from them. Whether it's a mistake, it's like can be a learning experience. So I think actually working in Hollywood gave me some harder skills that I feel like some therapists don't have. Like they have good soft skills, but I feel like I kind of am a powerhouse. And that's because I was answering 70 phone lines at one time, going to different places for photo shoots, dealing with the meanest, most awful people in the whole entire universe, celebrities, and, not all of them, getting demands placed on me, doing jobs that were not my job, but just being flexible and working with the catering team, helping with hair and makeup scheduling, flying here to help with this photo shoot, doing stuff with brands I, was working with. So I think that actually helped me in terms of being a therapist, even though it's a completely different world. So it's just funny that you said that because I sometimes think about how I'm like torn between why did I waste so much time? And I wonder if I would be the type of person I am right now if I didn't have those years working in that industry.
Yeah, maybe it was just really good preparation.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask you something I ask all my guests. So, what is the one thing about you that no one would know unless you told them?
I guess it's not something that no one would know about me, but I don't know if this would surprise people closest to me, but I think it's surprising the level of being an empath that I am. It's kind of outrageous. Like, and this is not in a stalking way, but if I'm in a supermarket and I see an older man, like in his 90s or something like that, and he's walking slow and kind of hunched over and slowly getting groceries, I have to I have to know if he's wearing a wedding ring because I literally won't be able to go home unless I know that he has a partner and he's not like sad and alone. And if he doesn't have a wedding ring on, I will honestly start tearing. And it is like really, really, really affects me badly. And not that you have to be married to be happy or anything like that. But for me, there's something about the older geriatric population and being obsessed with knowing that they're have a partner or someone there for them. And I wouldn't say that's normal, but it overwhelms me sometimes. Like it's almost, I wouldn't say it's like OCD, but I honestly have to know if that person's wearing a wedding ring or not. And I need to know that. And then I wonder, like, I hope they have someone at home. What if they're alone? What if they're living alone? Like, what kind of car is he driving? Does he need help getting in the car? So sometimes the caring about other people and the empathy part of me, it gets really, really intense. And I think that people know I'm caring and people know I am an empath, but sometimes the level of an empath I am is distracting. It gets in the way of things. It's intrusive. I know some family thinks it's kind of annoying. Like if I see a homeless person and they're like on crutches and it's a hot day, I'll beg them to turn around. No, we have to go somewhere. I'm like, please, I'm not gonna be able to stop thinking about it. Please, I have water and like I have water with me. Please, can we get them water? So it's just like I obsess about vulnerable people. That's something I've had to work on is not having pity for people you don't know about. Maybe that old man wants to be single. Maybe he divorced his wife. we never know. But that's something that I struggle with, that I think a lot of people that don't know me wouldn't know about me, is just the level of how much time and energy I spend stressing about people that I don't even know.
I find this astounding because you present as such an accomplished powerhouse. I can't imagine you obsessing about something that you don't have any control over in
Mm-hmm.
general. Also,
Mm-hmm.
your T-shirt says "Happy-go-lucky,"
Yeah.
which is in direct contrast to that.
Yeah. I know. Everything's ironic. Just like Alanis Morissette said, even though the song doesn't make sense.
Listen, I really enjoy talking to you. I do think you're such an accomplished, astounding, really remarkable woman who's doing really, really, really important work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I appreciate you sharing your journey with me today, because you're kind of hard to schedule because you're so busy.
I'm also just, I think that because my phone was my life for so many years, that I'm just like not a great texter. And that's something I constantly try to work on. But I think I spend so much time at work talking to people and students all day, every second, that after work, I absolutely have to fully disconnect to be able to like connect with myself again after the day's over. So work in progress.
That's
Yeah,
smart. That's smart. That's why you are who you are, because you're taking care of yourself.
trying to, absolutely. It's hard.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. I love the way Kylie thinks of her experiences as always a learning opportunity, whether they were good, bad, or disastrous, like her time in Hollywood, which she hated. None of that was time wasted. All of those experiences set her up for a future, for success. And she's using that drive, that tenacity, really all those skills that she developed to be a powerhouse in Hollywood, is now translating to making her a powerhouse at helping troubled kids who she really cares for and making their world a little better. So thank you, Kylie. Your work is really important, and I'm glad there's people like you out there doing it. And I'm also really glad that you know that it's important. If you see something, say something. If you suspect that a child's health or safety is jeopardized in any way by parents or anyone else, contact the Child Protective Services Agency in your county. 24-hour hotlines are staffed by trained social workers who will help you through the process, and you can do so anonymously. In California, you can call the Child Protection Hotline at 800-540-4000. So if you see something, say something. You might be saving a child's life. I want to thank the supremely talented Christina Apostolopoulos for her beautiful music, Eferisto. To hear more from music, go to Spotify and Instagram at Christina Aposto. That's ChristinaAposto. I know you want to. Her stuff is really great. And thanks to my audio producer extraordinaire, Marcos Campito. I'm glad I found you. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear, please rate us and hit subscribe.